recording.
This is Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, because they don't want me to.
That's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the Sig Sauer Studios.
They're never going to stop us here.
Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
Oh, good heavens. It is a Monday here on Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. I am Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom today and every single day in the Sig Sauer Studios, Monday through Fridays here in the first hour of the broadcast on this Crossbreed Holsters microphone, all of it being presented to you today, of course, by X Insurance. Greg down in Dallas, Tejas, running the boards, all the cool bells and whistles and switches and lights and buzzers and all the cool stuff going on down there in the network HQ. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good for a Monday gun day.
Let's write a song together right now.
Uh-oh.
Monday. No, let's do it this way. Sunday just rolled into Monday, but it's still Monday, gun day, fun day.
No.
Okay, let's not.
Yeah, let's not.
And just say we did.
Yeah, I'll hit the delay on that.
Let's not even say we did. Let's just roll Monday right in from Sunday, because that's what happens.
It does.
And it's quick. Last night's show, I'm moving right on. Where's the AWR drop? Moving on, right?
Give me a second.
So, moving on.
Thank you very much for that. And there we go. Last night's show flew by.
Yes, it did.
In record time, I think. It just felt like that anyway. And in large measure, it had to do with the guest lineup, because hour one with Mr. Gottlieb, I have to apologize again. If you were listening to the program last night, we talked about what are arguably two very complicated cases. California, the fee-shifting deal, the commies, in particular Newsom, deciding, hey, we can't win in the courts. Let's try to legislate around this. And let's make it impossible for gun rights activists to sue us when we pass bogus gun control laws. And in essence, what they did, Greg, as you know, is they said, if you sue us and you lose anything about the case, you have to pay all of our fees.
Yeah.
All of our fees. And that was patterned after SB 8 in Texas. Now, that's an abortion law. This is not an abortion show. We don't care about that, at least on this program. And while they said SB 8 in Texas was unconstitutional, they went ahead and patterned their own state legislation, which was actually legislated and signed into law by the governor, patterned after something that they said was unconstitutional to begin with. And the state attorney general said, hey, I can't defend the state here because the Second Amendment Foundation is suing them into oblivion yet again. And they will win. But the state attorney general said, no, I can't defend this because I've signed an amicus brief stating that the Texas law, which this is patterned after, California law, is unconstitutional. I can't sit here and defend this in court. But you're welcome to seek outside counsel, which Newsom did, and he hired a private law firm. So the reason I apologize is because I came back from a break last night, and I did not explain that. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to focus on a lot of you today who may be new listeners to the show. Or not, Greg, that gun rights activist that tunes in every single day or is a member of an organization, but may just simply be a gun owner, or maybe not even a gun owner. Maybe somebody driving down the road. Maybe you're just driving down the road, you're listening to the radio, you happened on Armed American Radio, and there are a lot of you. Greg, I would bet more of that than the ones I just mentioned. When you're talking about being on hundreds of radio stations, it would make sense. And I got to thinking about that last night, that I was going to pattern the show today afterwards, and then lo and behold, the New York Times made it really easy for me to do that. I'll explain all of this in just a moment. Suffice to say, Mr. Gottlieb on the broadcast last night was unbelievable. King Randall jumped in, saving kids before they get in trouble and commit crimes. We're going to go to Chicago before I go to the New York Times, and you'll see what I mean. He's doing God's work. Hour 2, Cam Edwards, followed by Stacy Washington. Stacy on the right, Sirius XM Patriot 125 channel host, great dear friend of me and this program. And then a roundtable that saw Russell Stewart fill in for the sick Brad Primo, CEO of Lead Slingers. Justin Moon was on fire last night. We now know he's a conspiracy realist. I love that.
Yep.
Oh, those are good drops. I hope you got some of those. I think we might use some of those. And Lee Williams filling in for the great Neil McCabe, the One American News national correspondent, who was doing his military duty over the weekend and couldn't jump in. So it was a dynamite program, Greg. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, it was a good show, definitely. And even with the rotation of guests, it made it that much more intriguing to hear perspectives from other voices that we don't get to hear often.
Say that one more time.
It was that much more intriguing to hear perspectives from voices we don't hear very often.
Yeah, particularly sitting around at a table like that in the round table. Now, we hear from Lee and we hear from Russell, but when you combine them all, and then when Cam, he's on the daytime show, but bringing him on the Sunday show was a lot of fun. And Stacy's always awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So today, handed to me yet again on a platter. And I got to thinking about last night when I just did not explain it. As a host of a radio program, that's a real no-no. You got listeners tuning in thinking, what the hell is this guy talking about? And today, as I was thinking, that really bothered me, Greg. That bugged me. I'd like to think I'm more experienced than that. But sometimes it happens. But the cases are so complicated, I'm so neck deep in them, that I just kind of, in the back of my head, made an assumption that everybody knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, sometimes we get caught up in because we pay so much attention to things that we think that everybody else is looking at stuff the same intensity that we are, and that's not always the case.
No, and that turns a show into inside baseball.
Sometimes.
And that's the worst type of radio there is. So as I was thinking about that, the New York Times popped up, and I saw this piece. I remembered it because it showed up in one of my alerts, but I really dove into it today. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. This will help me explain a lot about what this show is all about for new listeners or listeners who are, will be new listeners that are driving around today and picking up the show that are not the people that are donating to the Second Amendment Foundation or watching religiously or participating in the chat. And that's what talk radio is all about. So today we're going to dedicate that show to you. Crime. King Randall last night from the X School for Boys. We touched on crime, urban crime, and kids, right? He's mentoring kids 11 to 17 years old.
Yep.
And one of his big focus last night was you got to get to these kids early. You get to them in those impressionable years, and guess what they don't do? They don't turn to crime. So before I go to the New York Times piece, this popped up. It was kind of like that this morning. One piece right after another. I'm like, well, there's my show for today. I didn't even have to do any research. Illinois lawmakers begin hearings on new bill for stricter gun control Monday. Well, today is what day? Monday?
Yep.
Oh, so that's today. Illinois lawmakers seeking more gun control. So that kind of begs the question, how much more gun control could they look for? What don't they have that they want more of? So let's think about that. Put that in perspective. They've been sued into compliance with the Constitution more times than I can count. I have physically held the checks signed by Rahm Emanuel to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars because they've had to pay the legal fees for, in this case, the Second Amendment Foundation, who has just sued them into compliance time after time after time. And as much as Mr. Gottlieb enjoys doing that, Mr. Gottlieb, for those of you who are new, is the Second Amendment Foundation founder, 50 years into this now, neck deep defending your gun rights. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He is the guy back there behind the curtain. He is the guy behind the curtain pulling the strings, the bells and whistles. He's kind of like a I don't want to put it like a really important Greg. It didn't sound good, did it?
Greg is nowhere near that important.
Hold on. Let me take a sip of my. This is Circle K coffee today. As I was driving in,
So we'll
I didn't
circle
have
back
time
that
to
comment.
I didn't have any time to brew my Defender coffee today, so I had to stop and grab some Circle K. Hold on. Yeah, we'll circle back to that comment. I was only funning with Greg. I lost my train of thought. I just pulled a Biden. What? He's like the guy behind the curtain. And I said the really important Greg. You know the thing. He's the guy that's back there fighting for gun rights, and he sues Illinois into compliance on a regular basis. When we come back, I'm going to dig into this because I ask you the question, what does Illinois want that they don't already have? New bill for stricter gun control Monday. And I will tie these articles that I'm going to talk with you about today from the left together. It will kind of fall into place, I think, naturally as we progress through the 2 hours today. But all of this bears discussion. And if you're like me, you look at this stuff and you go, good heavens, here we go again. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense will be back. I am Mark Walters on the Crossbreed Holsters mic, filling your prescription for freedom in the 6 Hour Studios. We'll put it all together for you here in just a moment. Back to Chicago right after this.
Let me start off with 2 words. Made in America.
Scott, what's dropping affiliates like flies me? And I missed a previous
The song.
comment from you. What's it called?
The song that you were trying to put together for Sunday into Monday.
Oh, it's dropping affiliates like flies?
Yes.
Yeah, boy, yeah. They
That
probably went
accompanied
back to
my-
old Rush Limbaugh stuff.
That accompanied my comment with, I'll hit the delay on this.
Thanks a lot there, Scott. Monday Gun Day. See, I think of Illinois, I think Chicago immediately. We're not going back to Chicago, we're going back to Illinois. There is a difference, isn't there?
Well, it does lead into the reputation for the entire state.
Chicago controls the state. What can I say? Scott wants to run, Little Rabbit, run. That's a great tune. Run, little rabbit, run, run, little rabbit, run. Yon come in the big shotgun, run, little rabbit, run. I might have to, it's been raining here for a week. I think I might have to sit out in front of the shed, build me a fire tonight, play some Run, Little Rabbit, Run. Had me a glass of Tennessee whiskey, something I ain't done in a while.
Yeah, we're getting a bunch of rain too.
God, keep it down there, would you? It's rained here for a week, solid.
We've had several days of it where it'll be off and on.
Knocked this Circle K coffee. It's strong. I did the Colombian gig.
All right, close to close.
Queued on a 30. Firebreak, ready to roll. Rolling 1 and 2.
Daniel Defense advocates for the individual's right to bear arms, which is why they manufacture 100% American-made, high-quality firearms backed with a lifetime warranty. To learn more, visit DanielDefense.com. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show indeed. Mark Walters on the Crossbreed Holsters mic for you in the 6 Hour Studios. All of it presented by X Insurance. Here we go. Segment 2. Greg in Dallas, let's get going because I said Chicago. I said we're going to go back to Chicago in a moment. When I think of Illinois, from a gun-related standpoint, I think of Chicago. It's hard not to. Why?
Sure.
Well, if you look at Illinois, let me go to Georgia first before I go there as an example. Crime in Georgia. Get rid of Atlanta, and Georgia's got virtually no crime. There's that. So the same can be said about Illinois. Isn't that fair to say?
Yeah, for most states.
For most states. That's what I love when the lefties go, oh, yeah, well, the highest crime is in red states. No, it's in the blue cities in red states. You forgot to mention that, so we'll correct you here. Illinois lawmakers begin hearings on new bill for stricter gun control on Monday. What is it that they want? When we say the gun control crowd wants to take away your guns, all of you progressive lefties go, oh, that's a bunch of BS. Nobody wants to take away your guns, man. Yeah. Except you do, because you keep wanting more, and it doesn't stop until you get to what? Taking away your guns. So a couple things popped out on this piece today. State lawmakers are proposing a series of new gun control measures Monday in the hope of curbing gun violence in Illinois. So, Greg, we can end the show. Cue up the end of show music. You want to curb gun violence in Illinois? Divorce yourself from Chicago. Show's over, guys. We'll see you on Tuesday. There you go.
That's the show.
That's it.
We're done. That's a wrap.
No truer statement has been said. State lawmakers proposing a series of new gun control measures Monday in the hope of curbing gun violence in Illinois. You want to curb gun violence in Illinois? Rid yourself of Chicago. Guess what happens to Illinois' crime rates? Splash. That's what happens. Drop like you're throwing a stone into a pond. So today, lawmakers are going to discuss the new gun safety legislation. What is gun safety a code for? Gun control. Ooh, let's think about that one. See, so you lefty progressives that are listening and thinking I'm full of BS, well, you're in for a rude awakening, because your gun safety legislation is just more code word for more gun control. Illinois is one of the most gun-controlled states in the nation. The bill, get this, don't you love this? Listen to the names of these bills. Protect Illinois Communities Act. Think this is patterned after the federal gun legislation, gun control legislation that they call gun safety? Keep Our Communities Safer Act. How's that working out for you in Chicago, by the way? You know, if that was working, why do you need this? Because it isn't working. And it's not going to. It's not designed to work. It's designed to fool the masses who drink the Kool-Aid, who say, oh, it's just a start, because we know it's not going to do anything. So then we can go back and blame the Republicans and say, see, we need to do more, because you progressive lefties simply want more. And it doesn't stop until you get the ultimate, and that's taking away our guns. Well, how can you say that? Nobody wants to take your guns. Well, what does this bill want to do? The bill is called the Protect Illinois Communities Act. The goal, Greg, you ready for this? Is to ban assault-style weapons. Cue the music. End of show again. There you go.
There we go.
That's the ultimate goal. Nobody wants to take away your guns, except you do. House Judiciary Committee in Illinois is holding its first hearing on this legislation today, right now as we speak. It's 3:25 if you're listening live, Central Time in Chicago right now. But, let me make you feel a little better. Because it's not just about banning assault-style weapons. It also includes, get this, and I quote, plans to improve the state's firearm restraining order law, raise the age to get a firearm owner's identification card to 21, and also address illegal gun trafficking. Gun trafficking is already illegal. Did you note that? Address illegal gun. How do you want to address what's already illegal? What is it you want to do that will stop a criminal who is sitting in their illegal gun trafficking meeting in their den talking about illegally trafficking guns illegally already that they're going to pay attention to? Greg, can you help me with that one? Can you tell me what law would do that?
I can't think of one. The only thing I can think of is all those illegal gun traffickers that are private selling their firearms.
Oh, you mean law-abiding citizens?
Yeah, those illegal gun traffickers. Those guys.
This comes as victims and survivors of gun violence held a vigil in Hyde Park Sunday to honor those who've lost their lives or loved ones to gun violence. And the vast majority of that in Illinois is where? What city? Chicago. That's not to discount that there are other robberies. I mean, cities have crime. Crime is everywhere. But if you take Chicago out of the mix, Illinois is probably a much safer place. Mathematically, wouldn't it be? Just like if you remove the crime in Atlanta and compared it to the rest of the state. You remove Atlanta and Georgia's crime numbers are going to drop like a stone. Loved ones lit candles as they honored the approximately 6,600 lives the Chicago Survivors Organization estimates have been lost to gun violence in the U.S. since the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012. It's okay for them to light candles. I have no problem with that. Except if gun rights activists or supporters or Republicans offer thoughts and prayers, it's never enough. But it's okay to light candles. Yeah, I am being cynical. It's because of this type of nonsense. Because today, when I read some of the things that I went over for today's program, Greg, you get the sense, have you had enough of this yet, right? Has the New York Times had enough of doing this? Have readers of the New York Times read this stuff? We're going to talk about it in a minute. But it's all anti-gun. And you think to yourself, oh my God, these people are just barking up the same tree every single day, all day long. At what point are people going to say, like I do, for crying out loud, here we go again? I think we're kind of there. I'm not the only one feeling this way. So, this 11 o'clock, the hearing was set for today, by the way. So I don't know what the end. I said it was 3:25 was going on now. It's likely over by now. Gun violence survivors and advocates at 10:30 a.m. were speaking ahead of that hearing in Illinois today. Wonder how many were from Chicago. Wonder how many were relatives of victims of gangbangers who are causing the carnage and mayhem in Chicago, in Illinois, because that's where it's predominantly coming from. None of that will be addressed. I don't have to sit in that hearing to know that none of that will be talked about, Greg. They won't mention it. They won't mention where it's coming from, who's causing it. They won't touch it. All they're going to talk about is gun safety legislation for stricter gun control to curb gun violence in Illinois. When we talked about yesterday how easy that is to do. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. I want to take you to the New York Times. I have no idea how much time I'm going to spend on this one, but it's a good one. But keep that Illinois, keep this conversation about Illinois in the back of your mind when you hear what I'm about to tell you from the New York Times. We'll be right back.
If more people were armed and knew what they were doing with a gun, because it's not the gun, it's the person with the gun that don't know how to act.
tell you what, you swallow your coffee the wrong way. It sits with you, especially when it's super hot.
It does.
Woo. I like these portable styrofoam cups. They actually keep your coffee warm instead of cold. Should I eat one or two of these final energy balls here, Greg?
I feel like you've already ate plenty of them.
No, I haven't. I'm intentionally slowing down for a Monday. Maybe I should just enjoy my cigar on air and relax. Yeah, that's always a problem.
Yeah, there you go.
Just enjoy the cigar and the cup of coffee and relax.
Yes.
I guess we're close to close again. See? Haha.
20, roll on to.
20 is cute, and hold on, I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. Now we'll roll the 20. Because it's a 20.
The following segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by Defender Coffee. When you drink Defender Coffee, you're making a donation to a gun rights organization of your choice that protects and defends your freedoms. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, welcome back. I am drinking coffee, but it's not Defender Coffee today. It's Circle K coffee because I didn't have time to make another cup of Defender Coffee today, or I would have. I just wanted a cup of coffee. Mark Walters on the Crossbreed mic for you. Sig Sauer Studios fired up. All of it presented by X Insurance. If you're watching the live stream on your televisions or your devices, thank Daniel Defense and Lead Slingers Whiskey. And support all of our partners. We'll talk about them later in the broadcast. But you can visit all of them at armedamericanradio.com. Greg, welcome back, brother. On a Monday gun day. So I just noticed a comment. Yeah, I just noticed a comment from someone in the chat that says, good Lord, now we know why 27 counties in Illinois want to secede. There's a lot of truth to that because there's a movement in Texas, there's movement in Oregon, there's movement in Washington. This is not the first time, right? So to be fair, I'm picking on Illinois because this CBS Chicago piece, and I love to pick on Chicago, and Illinois makes it so simple. Illinois' response to all of the violence and crime is, we need more gun laws, which do nothing. Hell, guns were banned in Chicago until they were sued into compliance in 2010 during the McDonald case. I guess they want to go back to pre-McDonald. I guess crime and murders just started occurring after the McDonald case, which wiped out the gun ban in Chicago. Oh, wait, that didn't happen? Okay, you see the nonsense here, guys? So it's easy to pick on Illinois. But to be fair, you can say that about any blue state if you look at an electoral map and you see that the population centers are predominantly blue. The rest of the states are red. Illinois is no different. So great observation in the chat. Now, let me go to New York Times, and I want you to keep what we just talked about in Illinois in the back of your mind. Greg, I have lost count how many times the New York Times editorial board has done what I'm about to tell you about. And I want to go back to my original opening comments. Hold that thought. See, Greg, go ahead. Let it out. Spit it out.
We'll get there.
Okay. Here's the deal.
We'll get there.
We are going to get there. There's no question about it. To those of you who might not be neck deep in the topic of gun rights every day, like Armed American Radio Daily Defenses and Armed American Radio's Sunday Monstercast, we're doing this 6 days a week. We've been doing this for 14 years on the nation's airwaves. And I understand that most of you are probably not the gun rights activists like I am, or many of our listeners, regular listeners are, and many of you are new to it, tune in because the topic itself fascinates you. Maybe you're new to the show. So we're going to make it easy for you here. And that's why I bring this up, this New York Times. And I mentioned to Greg, how many times have we covered a New York Times editorial board going after guns in America? Greg, countless. I've lost count over the years.
Many.
Let me put it this way. I bet you wish you had $1, right? Because you'd have more money in your pocket.
Yeah.
For every time we've covered these idiots over there. And this is
go buy some pizza.
Fratelli's. There's a shout out for Dallas.
Yes.
The opinion from the editorial board in the New York Times yesterday. I intentionally left this one out until today because on the Sunday show I don't have enough time to go into these things because of the guest lineup. It's more prone for today's type, for today, the weekday show. America's toxic gun culture was the editorial opinion at the New York Times yesterday. And that was actually Saturday, not Sunday. But who's counting? It was the weekend. So I'm going to go through this with you. And keep in mind what we talked about Chicago and Illinois and what it is they're trying to do. They're doing what they say they don't want to do, which is come after your guns. They want to ban your guns. Connecticut, on the other hand, not only wants the governor anyway, it's not aging well for him. They already have assault weapons bans, etc. Their grandfather this stuff in where if you have one, you can keep it. Oh, thanks for that. You mean I can keep what I bought legally? Thank you, Mr. Politician, you leftist progressive Democrat. Marxist masquerading as a former Democrat. Glad you're outed. But they all do what? Well, now he wants to say you can't even keep, we're going to ban your possession of your products, which means we're going to take them from you. So keep all of this in mind. Here's the New York Times. A year ago, Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who's been on this program, he's a great guy, posted a Christmas photo on Twitter. In it, Mr. Massie, his wife, and 5 children pose in front of their ornament-bedecked tree. I want you to listen to the smartassery in this New York Times editorial piece. Each person is wearing a big grin and holding an assault weapon. Merry Christmas. P.S. Santa, please bring ammo. Greg, does that offend you? Does that offend you?
The statement alone, no, it's just as asinine.
No, I mean, let me rephrase. Does Massey's Christmas card picture?
Oh,
does that offend you?
Absolutely not. I wish I'd have gotten one, actually.
Who would it offend?
Congressman, send me one.
Congressman Massey, please. I know how to get a hold of you. Let's not make us go that route. Just send ammo, please, and a card. Who does that? Who does that offend? Who sees that and gets offended by that? I mean, literally offended. That offends me. What type of person?
Liberals.
Anti-gun,
Liberals.
socialist, commie, Marxist liberals.
Yep.
Who want to do what? Take away Massey's guns. But wait, what did we say? They don't want to take away our guns. The photo was posted on December 4, just 4 days after a mass shooting at a school in Oxford, Michigan, that left 4 students dead and 7 other people injured. So let's stop there. So what? Are legal, law-abiding, over 150 million gun owners in America supposed to feel guilty for being legal, law-abiding gun owners in America because of the actions of a psychopath that walked into a school?
According to them, yes.
Ah, well, see, this is why we're talking about it. Because according to them, yes. You're offensive. Offensive. Because you're a gun owner and shared a photo, and you support. Now, keep in mind, Massey's not just a regular guy. Massey is a representative, U.S. representative from Kentucky. Massey has some power. So he's not just a regular guy, even though he is a regular guy, but his job is a little bit more prominent, right? He's a congressman. That offends them. Because Massey, as a congressman, he should have known better. So I'm supposed to say, hey, guys, at my house, let's put the guns away for the day because a psychopath killed somebody in Oxford, Michigan. And if we don't do that, that's offensive to people who are easily offended. Because why? Why would it offend them? All guns are bad. All gun owners are bad. If you're a gun owner, you own guns, you're bad. Eventually, you're going to kill someone. How dare you even talk about your guns after something like that? Well, if you want to use that logic, we would never be on the air because lots of Democrat constituents are killing each other in Chicago right now as we speak. I gave you the numbers last night. Nearly 3,500 people in Chicago have been killed year to date as of yesterday, the 11th. Or shot. That number is pushing 700 dead or over 700 dead in Chicago. I'll have to check the exact numbers. I lose count. Forgive me. We've covered tens of thousands. So to use that logic, Greg, we shouldn't even be on the airwaves. Oh, and wait. They would love if we weren't on the airwaves because this conversation is offensive to those people who call us nuts and don't want to take our guns while supporting Illinois and their gun ban. And California's proposed gun bans, and Maryland's gun bans, and Connecticut's governor's proposed gun bans, and on and on and on. We'll be right back to rip into the liberals because it's too easy. This is the last segment already?
Yep.
Yeah. Next hour is going to be the rest of the New York Times piece because there's a lot in here.
All right.
Hope that's okay with you.
Sure.
Went to Best Buy today for the first time in a while. When was the last time you've been in a Best Buy? That long, huh?
Yeah, I don't go into Best Buys at all.
There's nobody there to help you anymore. I had a question about a camera light. I had to walk to the front of the store, ask the girl at the front. She had to take down my name and tell me to go stand back where I was and wait.
Wow.
Meanwhile,
remember when you used to have to beat the Best Buy employees away with a stick just so you could get in and look for something. They were asking to help every second.
not anymore.
No?
Now you got to go to the front and you got to go say, hey, can you send somebody back here? And maybe within 15 minutes they'll come popping back. And I did see a kid in a blue shirt, and they're all decked out in these like headphones, like they're Secret Service people. All kinds of crap strapped to their waist, earpieces in. Who are they talking to?
I have no idea.
Maybe they're listening for the girl at the front.
Doubt it.
I need someone in video cam and lighting, please. Customer's name is Mark. He looks kind of ornery. Somebody might want to get over there quickly. He's been to my desk 3 times. And everything now is locked up in cases, or you got to go to the front to get it because they're afraid of people coming in and stealing it.
In mass.
Uh-huh. It's crazy, man. You can thank a Democrat for that, by the way.
Yep.
Ooh, we're
All right,
close to
close to
close.
close.
See? I knew it. 30's
And
cute.
30. Roll on.
And rolling. Rolling hard on 2. That didn't sound good.
No, it didn't.
This segment of Armed American Radio's Daily Defense is being brought to you by Daniel Defense. Visit
DanielDefense.com.
Now, back to the show.
Back to the show. Mark Walters on the Crossbreed Holsters mic in this hour of the program. 6-hour studios fired up, all of it presented by X Insurance. Video brought to you by Daniel Defense and Lead Slingers. Saw a report from MyPillow today. So keep using that AAR promo code. They're very thankful. Believe it or not, Greg, they get more response from Armed American Radio listeners than virtually any other radio show out there, believe it or not. And they've been with us now the better part of a decade. It is remarkable. Not 1 week, maybe one in 7 years that I've seen that an AAR promo code wasn't used. I mean, one day. It's incredible. Keep it up, guys. Use the promo code AAR. It helps keep us on the airwaves, and that's what we need. We need these voices out here every single day talking about this. It's so vital and so important. Please visit all of our partners at armedamericanradio.com. All right, Greg, let me go back to this New York piece. I mean, here we are at the last segment of this hour already, but we have another hour to go.
Yep.
So I'm talking about people getting offended as if somehow, and see, this is virtue signaling by the New York Times editorial board. Because the New York Times building that these people walk into is protected by guns. I'm just saying. Okay for me, not for thee. But we're supposed to be offended because we're gun owners. We are looked down on. We are sniveled at by these elitist scumbags, these elitist fraternity scumbags, to go back to the old Animal House line in the movie. But they look down on us simply because we're gun owners. God forbid Thomas Massey post a photograph of his family holding legally owned, legally purchased products here in America. But what did the New York Times call it? Grotesque timing. And what did it do? Led many Democrats and several Republicans. Can you guess who the Republicans were, Greg?
I bet I could rattle off a list. It'd be pretty close.
Yeah, it'd be pretty close. But notice it's Democrats. Always Democrats getting offended. Everything offends a Democrat. Everything just offends them. Yeah, I'm a Democrat. I'm offended. I remember one time in a diner in Florida, I was wearing a T-shirt that I will not tell you what it said on it. Don't even ask me. When I had two people walk up to me at the diner and said, I find your T-shirt offensive. While I was having breakfast in Tampa, Florida with my girlfriend. I find your shirt offensive. Well, I can tell you by the nature of the shirt that I was wearing that they were, in fact, Democrats. That's why they found it offensive. But it's always, I don't recall ever going up to somebody and going, I find your shirt offensive. In fact, I laugh. Oh, that's a funny shirt, right?
Sure.
But to a Democrat, it's offensive. Your guns are offensive. The grotesque timing led many Democrats to criticize him. Others lauded it, and nearly 80,000 people liked his tweet. Ooh, that's my kind of Christmas card, wrote Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who then posted a photo of her 4 sons brandishing similar weapons. Now, here's where the New York Times goes into their, I guess because they're so incredibly knowledgeable. These weapons, lightweight and endlessly customizable, aren't often used in the way their devotees imagine, to defend themselves and their families. Now, here's the deal. That's actually a good thing that they're not used often, except they are. But what is the word often? How do we describe that? If you're the 12-year-old kid that used a 30-round magazine and shot 3 people back in Texas a few years ago who were breaking into your house while your mom and dad were at work, guess what? That's your AR-15 in action. You don't want to have to use it. I don't want to have to use mine, but they're standing guard at the ranch, Greg. Isn't that a good thing if I don't have to use it?
Yes, absolutely.
It's the fact that I have it. I bet every single one of these editorial board fraternity elitist scumbags has a fire extinguisher in their kitchen. And if they're smart, they should have one in their laundry room too. And their garage. I bet they do. But you know what? Those things, they're not often used the way their devotees imagine. Because why? Because in the scheme of things, very few homes really burn down, right? But if they do, and one is on fire, don't you hope you have one around? It's the same thing. It's a defensive tool. Now, you can go out and have a lot of fun with it, too. And yes, criminals can do bad things with it. They can do bad things with fire extinguishers. I've seen movies where people get bashed over the heads with fire extinguishers. Saw one just the other day, in fact. But I continue. In a recent comprehensive survey, which they do not link to, by the way, only 13% of all defensive use of guns involved any type of rifle. Only 13%. Could I argue that 13% is a fairly large number when it comes to people defending themselves? In a defensive gun use, a DGU as we refer to it? See, if they're not using a rifle, Greg, then what are they using? Because they're talking about all defensive gun uses. Then they're using pistols, aren't they?
Or shotguns.
Or shotguns. They're using a gun. And that pistol, by the way, is the same gun that Chuang Wei Cho used to murder 32 people and then off himself in Virginia Tech. A pistol is the same gun that was used by a killer who went into the Virginia Beach Municipal Building a few years ago and killed 12 of his colleagues, disgruntled employee. And a pistol was used in Chesapeake just a couple weeks ago. And I could go on and on and on. And virtually every single shooting in Chicago is a pistol. Yet here come the attacks by the fraternity elitist scumbags over at the editorial board from the New York Times. Nevertheless, though, according to the New York Times, in the 18 years since the end of the federal assault weapons ban, the country has been flooded. Get this, ladies and gentlemen, with an estimated 25 million AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles, making them, and this is where the New York Times kills themselves. We're going to have to go into the next hour with this, so I hope I don't lose you, because I want you to stay listening to because when I wrap this up with this, you're going to love this. Because the New York Times fraternity elitist scumbags at the editorial board of the New York Times are just telegraphing right here their own stupidity, and they're also making my point for me. when they say that the country has been flooded with an estimated 25 million AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles, making them one of what? The most popular in the United States, which to me I equate with in common use. I think 25 million of anything is common use, Greg, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree.
When used in mass shootings, the AR-15 makes those acts of violence far more deadly. I guess they are not concerned with the 32 people that were killed with the handgun by Shweng Wee Cho and Virginia Tech, or the vast majority of
60.
the near 3,500 shootings in Chicago that were committed with by criminals with pistols. It's all demonizing one category of firearm that they don't like. And, of course, they're working in conjunction with the Democrats on this. That's why they write this nonsense. They've drunk the Kool-Aid. It's no big deal. When we come back, I'm going to continue with this, and wait till you see what the New York Times has done here. Because these fraternist elitist scumbags, these fraternity elitist scumbags, I'll get it out, it's a Monday, are not as bright as they think they are. And this little old crazy gun nut radio host is going to checkmate them because it's so easy to do because they did it themselves and they're too stupid to even realize it, although they did get outed publicly. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. We will be right back at 6 minutes after the hour to continue this conversation. Do not go away.
You've just filled your prescription for freedom with Mark Walters, presented by X Insurance. X Insurance on the Armed American Radio Network.
I'll be right back.
All right.
Back at you, by the way.
All right. You see all these changes they make to the 4473?
Mm-mm.
They allegedly made 10 changes to it over the weekend.
I haven't seen the final draft.
Something about, from some of the synopsises I've seen, it looks like they're targeting under 21-year-old adults.
Yeah, that's the enhanced background check for kids between 18 and 21.
Yeah, and it looks like mental health stuff, too. All right, close to close.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that this week. I need to see final copies of that. Oh, it's got a 30 queued.
And 30, roll on 2.
Rolling 30 on 2. We'll also be talking about the new rules for the pistol brace. It'll be coming out in the next week and a half.
This is Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, because they
don't want me to. That's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the Sig Sauer Studios on the Fort Worth Armory. Platinum microphone.
They're never going to stop us here.
Oh.
Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
The second hour of Armed American Radio's Monday edition. In the shadows of the big monster cast yesterday on hundreds of radio stations, I am Mark Walters now in this hour on the Fort Worth Armory. Platinum microphone here in the Sig Sauer Studios. All of it presented every day by X Insurance. X Insurance. I've got my Sig P365 sitting right here next to me, Greg, in Dallas, Texas, running the boards, producing the show with all the bells and whistles and switches and cool lights and everything, sitting back in your chair with all the cool electronics around you with that giant mothership behind you in the glass window. How's it going today?
Not too bad for it looks like a little rainy Monday out there if I can look out my window.
Well, we've had enough of that, so I don't even want to talk about it.
Coming your way.
Oh, I do have a hilarious story to tell you. And you know what? Because it's the second hour, I think I will.
All right.
Yeah, I had a lot of inquiries. Mark, you had a medical procedure over, Thursday and Friday. You were out. Is everything okay? I'm going to answer that question coming up in this hour, and I'm going to tag a funny to it that's going to, just be prepared to laugh. Greg, before we go any farther, and Greg knows what I had done, so when I say it's going to be funny, I can promise you it's going to be funny. Greg, would you tell people it's funny? I haven't even told it yet. Oh, no, we'll wait. Oh, golly, I can't start the show on that. I got to end the show on that note. I don't know. We'll see. Greg, would you tell people how to watch the show, please?
Sure, absolutely. If you want to watch the show as we are live 6 days a week, head on over to armedamericanradio.org. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to see 3 little hash marks. Just give those a slap. When that window pops open, select the Watch Live option. Maybe you're driving or doing something else and you just rather listen. The link right above that is the Listen Live link. Now, when you get there, you have to pay attention. There's 2 links you have to select from. One of them is our Daily Defense link. That's the Monday through Friday show. The other is the Sunday Monster Cast. So if you click the wrong link, you might end up on the wrong show and not catch us live. If you've missed the previous show, or maybe you missed the show that you're trying to listen to and you have to catch it in podcast form, well, we've got a podcast link right above that Listen Live link. You can go there and just peruse at your heart's desire and listen to any episode that we have up there uploaded. Now, if you love the show and you want to sport some AAR merch, head on down to that shop link at the bottom of all those links and head over and check out all the merch that we got in the AAR shop. And lastly, if you want to join our live chat 6 days a week as we are live on the air and sometimes even when we're not live, head on over to your app store, grab the Telegram messaging app, create your profile, and just search for Armed American Radio Conversations.
Get my mic back on there. There we go.
That'd be nice.
I was laughing in the background. I'm not going to tell that story right now. I'll check with you during the show. Maybe during a break. Maybe it's not appropriate.
Oh, well, we'll see.
But, we'll see. So, anyway, medical procedure was fine, by the way. So those of you that inquired. It's one of those things you have to do.
They find a Derringer in there?
Oh, golly. Are you saying that it had something to do with that a camera was involved or something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, let's just move on, please. Let me go back to the New York Times here.
So, moving on.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's move on. I'm continuing the conversation. Those of you who might just be picking us up in the first those of you who might just be picking us up in the second hour, let me give you a quick recap. I'm going over a New York Times editorial board from the elitist fraternity scumbags over there in an opinion piece that popped out from the New York Times on Saturday, and it is remarkable. It is demonizing you as a gun owner, because you are to be blamed for everything bad that happens from a criminal with a gun. It's that simple. And we're in the process of checkmating these idiots over there that think that their Ivy League educations that make them better than you. And this is proof positive that, well, it doesn't. So back to the New York Times. Talking about Massey and sharing photos with guns, and it happened to be 4 days after Oxford, Michigan, a killing in Oxford, Michigan, as if somehow all gun owners should be shamed and put their guns away, and we should all just not go to the range, and we should all just honor, because criminal did something bad. Good heavens. So anyway, I was describing for you the terminology that they were using, these weapons, talking about the AR-15. Lightweight and endlessly customizable aren't often used in the way their devotees imagine to defend themselves and their families. Now, Greg, during a break, something popped in my head.
All right.
What do we hear incessantly from guys like Murphy and Schumer and the rest of them, all the gun grabbers, from the Brady campaign, from violence policy, from Every Town for Gun Safety, from that whack job Shannon Watts? What do we hear from? If it saves just one life, it will have been worth it. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's pretty close.
So if an AR-15 saves just one life, it wasn't worth it? I'm just asking for a friend. You can think about that one on your own, okay? Because you see, because the 12-year-old I referred to, I think it was the Texas case, Greg, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Houston a couple years back where a 12-year-old used the family's AR-15 and ended 4 people attacking his house while his parents were out of town. Remember that?
Yeah, I think that was outside of Houston. I think you're correct.
And there's a number of them. And guys, if you really want to do it yourself, go ahead. If you're new to the show, don't take my word for it. Google AR-15 used to defend home. And you'll get list after list after list of them. But remember, if it's just, duck, go, whatever you want to use. But remember, just use their words against them. If it saves just one life, it will have been worth it. Unless it saved a life with a gun, then it wasn't worth it. And that reminds me of that idiot Dukakis. You mean if Kitty Dukakis was, attacked, and I got bleeped the last time I used the word by Greg, my producer, you wouldn't be for the death penalty? And Dukakis went, no. Well, all of America knew he was full of crap. Just like we all know these people are full of crap. But when the New York Times puts this nonsense out, we have to bring it to your attention. Nevertheless, the New York Times said, in the 18 years since the end of the federal assault weapons ban, the country has been flooded with an estimated 25 million AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles, making them one of the most popular in the United States. Wasn't it Jerry Nadler at a recent hearing, Greg, that was asked if, in fact, they were talking about banning the firearm?
That's the point of the bill.
What was it again, Representative Nadler?
That's the point of the bill.
Representative Nadler, do you want to ban my gun? Does this bill ban my gun?
That's the point of the bill.
So they've admitted it. However, we know that the Supreme Court has stated on 3 separate occasions now that you cannot ban guns that are what? In common use at the time. What did the New York Times, the elitist fraternity scumbags at the New York Times, just admit to us in this anti-gun hit piece focus specifically on the AR-15. That the country has been flooded with an estimated 25 million AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles. Now, if you're a liberal, progressive, Marxist, socialist, masquerading as a former Democrat, let me make the math easy for you. That means if every person that has one only has one, there would be 25 million people that owned one. And gee, if everybody had two, if you divide 25 by 2, you get the numbers, right? There are millions of Americans that safely use the semi-automatic AR-15 every single day. And yes, they are used to defend. The guns that I have in my home that I have not, hopefully never do, had to pick up and use for its intended purpose to defend, and that is its intended purpose, is to defend my home. Those very guns are defending my home and my family right this second by virtue of the fact that they are even there and ready to rumble. Isn't that a fair statement to make, Greg, down in Dallas, pushing all the buttons in the network?
I would, yes, I'd agree with that.
Does it have to be picked up and fired to be there? Of course it doesn't.
It's just a deterrence by itself.
Boom. When used in mass shootings, the AR-15 makes those acts of violence far more deadly. It has become the gun of choice for mass killers, except if you're Swing Wee Cho, and except if you're the Virginia Beach killer, and except if you're a gangbanger in Chicago or Los Angeles or New York or Philadelphia and you're carjacking people for a living, or Sandy Hook. Well, Sandy Hook was a rifle as well, but also a handgun. If I could go on and on and on. The vast majority of murders committed by criminals in this country are criminals using handguns. And I'm going to give you the math one more time before we go to the break. Less than 400 murders in this country, according to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report, latest numbers for 2021, were committed with any type of rifle. So the brilliance at the New York Times editorial board just told on themselves by telling you there's 25 million of them in the country. If they were a problem, you'd already know it. We'll be back to continue.
Yeah, I thought old boy at Sandy Hook used a couple of pistols. I know he did steal a rifle, but I didn't think he used it.
Yeah, he did. He used a rifle. There was some questions about his. He shot his way into the school as well. He used a rifle and a pistol. So I want to make that clarification because he did. I don't want to come across as an Alex Jones. He did use a rifle, and he had a pistol with him.
I thought I remembered a pistol being the primary weapon.
No, unfortunately, it was an AR. In fact, it was a Bushmaster XM15 to be specific, which was, of course, owned by Winchester, which is why they sued, which is why Winchester's out of business, which is why there was a large settlement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Was for that.
We're getting the internet, Bert.
Me and you?
Yeah, I just when we were talking just within the past 20 seconds, there was a pretty good little ping on your internet over there.
Probably too much for me to see on the stats already. It's probably already floated by me.
It's still showing if you want to look. That's if you get there before it washes away.
I can see the little tiny blurb, but it doesn't look like it was enough to do anything. Looks like the Comrex did its job, at least from my end anyway. I see yellow, not a catastrophic red drop.
I see red, I see gaps, I see
Do you?
I see a little more than you do.
Okay. Yeah, we've still got a solid connection here online, so we should be good.
Yeah, video's still feeding.
The New York Times. They never let you. That was me, by the way, my mistake when I cut out. That was not a drop.
Yeah, I was looking over at the thing.
That was an accident. I apologize. And I knew that's what you were thinking. Cued and ready.
And 30. Roll on 2.
Rolling. This Padronis is wonderful.
Daniel Defense advocates for the individual's right to bear arms, which is why they manufacture 100% American-made, high-quality firearms backed with a lifetime warranty. To learn more, visit DanielDefense.com. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show indeed. Hour 2 on a roll right now on a Monday, following the big Sunday Monster Cast here on the Fort Worth Armory mic. I am Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom today and every day, Monday through Friday, in the 6 Hour Studios. All of it brought to you by X Insurance. If you're watching the feed on your devices or your television sets, we appreciate that. Daniel Defense and Lead Slingers, you can thank them for that. Please go out of your way to support all of our partners. They make this discussion 6 days a week possible on the nation's airwaves. Now 14 years into this national radio broadcast, and we continue to grow. We continue to grow. That says something. It definitely does. We're very proud of that. Greg in Dallas, how are you?
I'm good.
Let's continue with the New York Times, the elitist fraternity scumbags over there, shall we?
Yeah,
It's too much fun. It's too much fun. So remember, it's the AR-15, 25 million Americans, and I say us because I own several of them. If that were a problem, you'd already know it. If it was as bad, if the gun was as bad as they say it is, I would imagine we'd have 25 million times the carnage. But we don't. In fact, less than 400 used in any crime, not just AR-15s, any rifle at all. And that's the FBI's Uniform Crime Report numbers. They can't fudge those numbers, Greg. It's either an AR-15, it's another rifle, or it's a knife, it's hands, it's feet, it's fists, it's a blunt object, it's a skateboard. That's hard to fudge those numbers, isn't it, Greg, down in Dallas, Texas?
Yeah, you got to have bodies that stack up with all of those incidents, and I mean, good Lord, help us if they start pulling COVID shenanigans with shooting numbers.
AR-15, 25 million. If it was a problem, you'd already know it. And there's that old bumper sticker logic. I don't like until I like it because it makes a lot of sense. So I explained to you that the fraternity elitist scumbags at the New York Times editorial board overlooked the fact that the vast majority of murders in this country are committed by criminals, most of them gangbangers, in Democrat-run cities whose real weapon of choice is a handgun. That's simple. The AR-15, according to the New York Times, has also become, and listen to this, this is where we shift over now to a different narrative within a narrative. The first narrative being that all guns are bad, in particular the AR-15. That's where their focus is spent. So we're going to go to a narrative inside a narrative. The AR-15 has also become a potent talisman for right-wing politicians and many of their voters. That would be you, ladies and gentlemen. Here comes the demonization, continued demonization of you. That's a particularly disturbing trend at a time when violent political rhetoric and actual political violence in the United States are rising. The insinuation here is not even an insinuation. They're blaming you and gun owners and right-wing politicians, the entire Republican Party, half the nation, for the violent political rhetoric and actual political violence. Yet not one time were any of the 2.5 years of destruction of American cities from far-left loons, Biden supporters, I might add, Democrat supporters, I might add, Democrats themselves, I might add. Is it even mentioned, Greg? Are you shocked by that?
No, not at all.
Because it's always violent right-wing extremism, and they claim it's a challenge, quoting, on many fronts. This board has argued for stronger enforcement of state anti-militia laws. Here's the narrative forming within the narrative, that AR-15s are bad. Better tracking of extremists in law enforcement and the military. That means ridding law enforcement and the military of anyone who isn't a progressive, Marxist, socialist, communist, leftist, moron who doesn't think like this board does. If you don't think like this elitist fraternity scumbag New York Times editorial board, you shouldn't be in law enforcement, and how dare you even consider joining the military? Oh, but wait, we talk about Canada a lot and how this is a global effort. And I ask the question, day after day, week after week, year after year on this show, what is it about their agenda? The leftist, progressive, socialist, Marxist, communist, formerly Democrat agenda that requires your disarmament. What is it about that? It's a global effort. And what does the New York Times say? We need stronger international cooperation to tackle it, meaning your right to bear arms. That's what the it is, because to them it's a transnational issue. Your gun ownership is the problem, according to this elitist fraternity scumbag New York Times editorial board. But according to them, most important, again quoting, there is a civil war raging inside the Republican Party between those who support democracy and peaceful politics and those who support far-right extremism. And supporting democracy and peaceful politics are their code words for Democrat progressive policies. So if you don't support their Democrat progressive policies, which they describe as supporting democracy and peaceful politics, that would include, I have to assume, burning down American cities, Antifa, leftists, destroying American cities, where the CNN reporter famously stood in front of the raging inferno behind him and said, it's mostly a peaceful protest. So one can draw the logical conclusion that these people think that that's okay. Why? Because they're fighting you. That makes it okay. But if you fight them back, you are the problem. Even though it's leftists burning down our cities. Why? Let's finish the whole quote. More important, there is a civil war raging inside the Republican Party between those who support democracy and peaceful politics and those who support what? Far-right extremism. That conflict has repercussions for all of us. And the fetishization of guns is a pervasive part of it. Let me just throw a little bit of cold water on these idiots. Wasn't it the kid with the skateboard that was trying to kill Kyle Rittenhouse, who pulled a Glock handgun on him and admitted in court that Kyle Rittenhouse likely would not have shot him if he hadn't had drawn his weapon on him? And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't that come out in court? I'm just asking for a friend.
You're combining two people. The skateboarder was shot dead, and Gabe Grosskreutz was the guy that was shot in the bicep that pulled the Glock on him. And he's the one that testified in court.
And admitted what I just said.
Yes, correct.
So leftists, anarchists don't have guns. Of course they do. Of course they love guns. There's an entire liberal gun group out there whose, I guess, founder or leader has said that her group includes everybody, even Antifa.
But Antifa is just an idea. It's not a movement.
Mm-hmm. And they're just fighting in support of democracy and peaceful politics, which you, gun owners, as right-wing extremists, because you're a gun owner, are not. When we come back, the nonsense BS from the New York Times continues. And then when we close out the hour, you're going to love what they did. You can't make this stuff up. We'll be right back. this coffee, for the most part, has stayed nice and toasty inside that styrofoam cup there.
Well, their styrofoam cup technology is then worthy.
Going back to the old Masad Ayub on the absolutely hilarious beer mug gig from 2010. Oh
yeah.
my God. I said, can you brandish a beer mug in a bar, Masad? Can you brandish a firearm on the range? And he laughed. He said, well, I guess we should turn to styrofoam technology. Let me turn to Dixie. And Sean started cracking up. Safe mug. He called it, so we should turn to safe mug technology. Maybe we should turn to Dixie and styrofoam. That's what he said. Hilarious.
Smart mug technology.
Oh, man, he was so funny. That clip is so funny. I can't think of a more classic in all these years than that. Masad and I joke about that every time we see each other.
Yeah, I can't think of anything since I've taken over producing.
Not that funny. And they were in the studio with me too, which is what made it so funny, because we were looking at each other and the laughter was real, you know.
Yeah. Being contagious.
Oh, man. And Sean in the background was, when he said to me, Mark, did you show him the picture? And I said, Sean, I didn't think the picture would go out well over the radio. And he caught his question. He said, no, I mean to your guests in the studio. You know? Gail laughed in the background. Masad was chuckling. And we had some other guests that had won a promotion that were there. A guy was there with his son. Yeah, and it was hilarious. It was just funny.
You had to be there.
I have the clip somewhere. We'll have to.
Yeah, I think I've got it over here now.
If you have it, then one day we'll play that.
Ready.
No, one day we'll play that, though. It's funny. Maybe we'll play that over the holidays. Maybe we'll do that on
We played that not too
Christmas
long ago.
or New Year's. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. I guess, it's probably been over a year, believe it or not. It doesn't seem like that, but it has.
I think it was earlier this year.
It was this year?
Close to close. Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
Because Brian got us the clip, and then I put it in. And
That's
we played
right.
it at some point in like April or May.
Yeah, we'll have to play that again. That's worth it.
20. Roll on 2.
Rolling on 2.
Yep.
Yeah, that clip is worth it. That's fun. Fun stuff.
The following segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by Defender Coffee. When you drink Defender Coffee, you're making a donation to a gun rights organization of your choice that protects and defends your freedoms. Welcome back to the show.
You know, I usually sip Defender coffee from the time I get up in the morning, at least throughout the day. And I'm actually drinking a Circle K coffee because I was out, and when I got back, I was rushing to get back to the studio in time for today's broadcast, and I wanted a cup of coffee, and I didn't have enough time to brew a cup of Defender coffee. But you can, and when you do drink Defender coffee like I do, you support the Second Amendment. And I would recommend that if you buy Defender coffee, I am recommending you buy Defender coffee. Of course, use the promo code AAR. Let them know you support Armed American Radio and that you support them for supporting Armed American Radio. That might be the coffee there that just came out, Greg. But,
all right.
Yeah, it works. It all works. But when you do that, you can donate a portion of your profits. And in my case, I would recommend to you that you donate to the Second Amendment Foundation like I do. And at the end of the year, SAF gets a check from Defender Coffee. That's a no-brainer. I could knock my hat off here in the studio with that one because it's such a head slapper. Wow, that's pretty easy to do. DefenderCoffee.com. Please make it a point to go out of your way. Remember, this is the Fort Worth Armory microphone. We are in the Sig Sauer Studios. I have a Sig P365 right here. Been carrying it on my hip all day long because I can. And I guess according to the New York Times, well, I'm not that evil because this is just a handgun. I guess if I had an AR-15 strapped over me and went about my business as a law-abiding citizen, that would make me a right-wing extremist, eventual school killer, murderer. I don't know. Well, I don't have although I have a college education, I don't have the elitist fraternity, Ivy League, scumbag education that they have. So I digress. Please support all of our partners. And all of this is brought to you in the 6 Hour Studios by X Insurance. Please visit armedamericanradio.com. Check them all out. Pick up the food from heavensharvest.com, and you'll see all of them there. You need some training, legalheat.com has you covered as well. Okay, guys, let's go back to the New York Times because it's so easy to do. This piece, I would have loved to have covered this on Sunday, but here we are 2 hours in, Greg, almost, hour and a half in. And I
proposed it to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 2-hour show, this stuff. They just hand it to you. The prominence of guns in campaign ads is a good barometer of their political potency. Democrats have sometimes used guns in ads. In 2010, Joe Manchin, and I think you might remember this ad, running for the Senate, shot a hole through a copy of the cap-and-trade climate bill with a single-shot hunting rifle. But, okay, well, that's okay. He didn't use an AR-15. It was just a single-shot hunting rifle, which, by the way, is far more powerful than an AR-15, but I'll digress there, too. Since then, though, guns have all but disappeared from Democratic messaging. That makes them good. Do you see how this is written? They got the message, ladies and gentlemen. Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massey, and the rest of us, we didn't get the message. And the New York Times points out, since then, guns have all but disappeared from Democratic messaging, but in the most recent midterm elections, Republican politicians ran more than 100 ads featuring guns and more than a dozen that featured semi-automatic, military-style rifles. So what does that tell you right there, Greg? The New York Times is running with that narrative, right? Guns are bad. People that have guns are bad. Republicans have guns. Republicans are bad. Democrats quit using guns because Democrats are good and they're righteous, and the New York Times is virtue signaling. And remember, the civil war raging in American politics today isn't raging on the left. There's no battle between the far left lunatic fringe like AOC and Ilhan Omar and the rest of those kooks. No, it's only on the far right because the New York Times doesn't like the far right. This is as leftist as you can get. You're the one being demonized. God forbid that Republican politicians actually run on your constitutional right to own a gun. By the way, it was the New York Times that hated all over Kemp back 4 years ago when Kemp ran a very pro-gun, arguably the most pro-gun gubernatorial campaign I've ever seen was run by Brian Kemp. And in large part, that's why part of the reason why he won that election, even though Stacey Abrams to this day doesn't admit that. She just admits that she wasn't the governor. But boy, he cleaned her clock in these midterms by about a full solid 8 points, to the point that she was forced to concede immediately. See, I'm getting off my subject matter here. The point that I'm making is, if you're a gun owner, what house do you have politically? It's the Republican Party. Does it need to be fixed? Yes. Is it as pro-gun as we'd like? No. You going to look at me with a straight face? Democrats will, because a Democrat will look at you at midnight and tell you the sun is shining right in front of a camera. They'll tell you anything. They just lie right to you. But you do not have a home as a gun owner in the Democrat Party. It's that simple. Get that through your head. So you vote Republican. That's where your gun rights lie. We still have work to do. Those are your two choices. And the New York Times is making that very, very clear in this elitist fraternity scumbag editorial. In one of the most violent of those ads, Eric Greitens, a Republican candidate for Senate in Missouri, and I remember this ad, and a former Navy SEAL, kicks in the door of a house and barges in with a group of men dressed in tactical gear and holding assault rifles, boasting that the group is hunting rhinos, a derogatory term for Republicans in name only. I'm surprised they called it derogatory, quite frankly. Yeah. With everything we're seeing here, I'm surprised they said that. But it fits their bill. They're trying to make it look like, well, we defend Republicans too. Because rhino, no, that's not really why. Because the Democrats at the New York Times like rhinos.
Uniparty.
That's why. So if you say something about a rhino and the Democrat New York Times editorial board likes rhinos because rhinos buck their party and sometimes vote with Democrats, right, McConnell? It's okay. It's derogatory. The ad continues. Get a rhino hunting permit. There's no bagging limit, no tagging limit, and it doesn't expire until we save our country. Remember that ad, Greg?
I do, a little bit.
Yeah. I guess we've lost our sense of humor in this country.
Well, and let's also not forget that there's such a civil war raging that there are actual Democrats leaving the Democrat Party
In droves.
because of the lunacy.
Correct. But that would not be indicative of a civil war raging in that party, would it?
No.
And the lie of
Midwest.
omission says, let's not even talk about it if you're the New York Times. Elitist fraternity scumbag editorial board. Spot on. I'm glad you mentioned that because you're right about that.
Tulsi Gabbard, Kirsten Sinema leaving, Joe Manchin even siding with Republicans when the time is right.
I guess there's a big effort behind the scenes to bring Sinema to the Republican Party. She likely will not do that because she's going to keep her committee positions because, well, the Democrats don't have any convictions. Let's just keep her on here so she'll vote with us. Let's just keep her over here and she'll vote with us. That's a 100-year-old politician, by the way, impersonation, ladies and gentlemen, that shouldn't be in office for as long as any of them have been in office. I digress. Twitter, according to the New York Times, flagged that ad. Facebook banned it for violating its terms of service, and Greitens lost his race for office. He may have been play acting in the ad, do you think? But he may have been play acting. We admit that. But many other heavily armed people with far-right political views are not. We know he's play acting. We know he is. But others aren't. I mean, this is like listening to a little kid making an argument, right?
Yeah,
That's always got a comeback to you. He's always got some smart-ass comeback. And that's what makes you, I won't say this. I was going to say back in the day. No, I'm not going to go there. Not today's day and age. Openly carried assault rifles have become an all too common feature of political events around the country and are having a chilling effect on the exercise of political speech. When in reality, that's what those political events, for the most part, are. Let's take Richmond, Virginia. The left tells you about 15,000 people there, when in reality it was counted out to be about 60,000. And if you look at the drone footage, it was tens and tens and tens of thousands, closer to 60,000. They were there legally and lawfully carrying their sidearms. Many were carrying rifles, not in violation of the law, but within the bounds of the law. And the New York Times didn't like that in Richmond, Virginia. But they were forced to admit it was mostly peaceful because not only was it mostly peaceful, it was 100% peaceful unless you were the leftists that were there trying to cause problems.
20?
There's that. One more segment left, and we're going to slide into home with this nonsense from the New York Times, and I'm going to tell you what they did to make utter buffoons of themselves as if they haven't already. We'll be right back. Barbara, I love it. Sounds like rhinos don't like being called rhinos. Well, if rhinos didn't rhino, then we wouldn't have rhinos and therefore wouldn't call them rhinos. Try explaining that to a rhino. You know, the sad part, Barbara, is they know they're rhinos. Mitch McConnell knows he's a rhino. Sad but true. Sad but true.
And this article is kind of why I like to advocate for open carry so that people are not so traumatized by the sight of a rifle slung over somebody's shoulder. They're more or less like, oh, hey, AR-15. Oh, hey,
if you get your head out of a New York Times editorial and walk around in Georgia and see that, you don't think twice.
Yep.
Only in their little Democrat fraternity elitist scumbag outlets and cities do they think that way. The rest of the country doesn't. I love stuff like this. When I see stuff like this, because I knew on Saturday, here's your show on Monday, dude.
Sure.
Because this is evergreen stuff. You can take this anytime you want. So I ordered 2 bourbon barrels for aging, and I can't wait to get them. One of the companies I got it from is a place called North Georgia Still Company.
All right.
That's pretty cool, right? They're up outside Dahlonega in the mountains, and they manufacture very nice, and they import very nice copper stills. And I was talking with the owner today because I ordered a bourbon barrel from him, and I'm like, they were close enough this morning that if I could have, I would have driven up there and picked up a couple more from him today instead of waiting for shipping, because I have 3 different things I want to age. And he said, we outsourced those, Mark. I wish we could have gotten them for you, but they shipped from Maryland. And he said, yours will be there in a couple days. He says, pick one up from Amazon. They pretty much do the same thing. Just make sure it's a number 3 oak char, right? Which I did.
All right.
So I picked up another one from him. And hold on one second, bro. Something just popped in over here.
Close to close.
No time to read
Bring
this
it
and
up.
no time to finish my story. Hold on. No.
And 30. Roll on.
You have a solid connection?
Look.
I'm rolling 30?
Yeah, you were fine.
Okay.
Just see on my little phone that the stream is spinning, so I didn't know.
Okay. Brake's moving too quick. Sorry.
This segment of Armed American Radio's Daily Defense is
Being brought to you by Daniel Defense. Visit DanielDefense.com.
Now, back to the show.
Back to the show indeed. Final segment already. I promise you we're going to slide into home. I do not have time to tell you my very funny story about Friday and what happened to me on Saturday after. But I'll see if Greg reminds me, I'll see if I can get to it. I'll see if I can get to it tomorrow, because it is funny. If I get a chance, it'll be one that you'll enjoy. I promise you. Believe me, and I'm not going to charge you admission for the comedy that you're going to get out of that one, because it's good. All right, Greg, welcome back in. Sig Sauer Studios fired up. Fort Worth Armory Mike, X Insurance bringing all of it to you. Daniel Defense and Lead Slingers bringing you the high definition video. We appreciate that, and all of our partners. Please go out of your way. And I got to tell you guys, you can make it real easy. If you want to get some really fun stuff, we've designed some really cool Armed American Radio gear in conjunction with Armed AF. That's Armed and Faithful, based out of Phoenix. And you'll see it right there at armedamericanradio.com. Click the shop button up top and pick up some T-shirts, some hats, some mugs, some tumblers, all kinds of really cool stuff, some stickers. And a lot of you have, but we need more of you to do that, okay? We need your help staying on the airwaves, and that's part of how we do it. And you get some really cool, super high quality, made in America gear and shipped right from Phoenix, Arizona, direct to your doorstep. Scott Cerconi and the guys over there do a wonderful job, wonderful job. So support us, support them. We need your help. That's how we stay on the airwaves. Support all of our partners. ArmedAmericanRadio.com. You'll see them all lined up there. All right, let's go back to the New York Times, because we're going to slide into home with this. This is absolutely hilarious. But I have to go a little farther. Greg, we saw this narrative being created within the narrative. All Republicans are bad. It's guns. It's gun owners. Nothing. Not mentioning anything about the left. Now, something that popped in my head during a break when I was looking over some of these notes. Do you remember the Stone Mountain, Georgia leftist gun organization that showed up heavily armed inside Stone Mountain Park, which, by the way, is legal in Georgia? I supported their right to do that. It doesn't matter that they're left. They have a right. Every American has a right to keep and bear arms. Greg, do you remember that story when we got one of the guys who was in a sniper position And I believe he was in a prone position, was pointing a rifle up at the top of Stone Mountain where there were a lot of tourists up there. Do you remember that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, you know what? The Black Panthers show up armed. Guess what? They're law-abiding citizens carrying firearms as long as they're not breaking any law. Do you have a problem with that?
No.
Nor do I. Apparently, the New York Times doesn't either, because those two are anything but far right. And I could name tons of them. And they also, but it's always the media telling you one side of the story. And we already know that to be the case. And by the way, that kind of goes a little bit to Elon Musk out there just popping liberal heads with what he's exposing over at Twitter. Okay, he's putting the information out that the mainstream media will never put out. Now they're kind of being forced to because Elon Musk is doing it. Anyway, we were talking about some of those ads and going on. Now, the intimidating display of weaponry isn't a bipartisan phenomenon. And they talk about 77% of the protests, those who were armed, represented right-wing views, such as opposition to LGBTQ rights and abortion access. To the left, LGBTQ rights and abortion access is not extreme. If you oppose that, maybe because of your religious views are extreme. Not the leftist position, but your opposition to it. Hostility to racial justice rallies and support for former President Donald Trump also and they have to mention his lie of winning the 2020 election. So again, you've got narratives inside narratives inside narratives, all of them coming at you from the left, from the elitist fraternity scumbags at the editorial board at the New York Times. It's a fascinating read. It really, truly is. But then listen to this justification. As we've seen at libraries that host drag queen book readings, Juneteenth celebrations, and pride marches, none of which is extreme to the left. I mean, what's wrong with libraries hosting drag queen book readings for kindergartners? Nothing extreme to see here. But it's the Second Amendment that's extreme, because your right to bear arms, according to the editorial board, is fast running up against the First Amendment's right to peaceably assemble. In other words, your right to bear arms is scaring the drag queen book readers in Juneteenth celebrations and pride marches. Greg, remember the shooting, was it North Lake, Illinois, at the July 4th celebration last year? I think it was, the guy was on top of the roof. I forget.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact city. But yeah, it was July 4th.
Oh, it was the 4th of July weekend.
Yep.
And now the New York Times, the way they write this, would have you believe that all Americans are afraid to go. And they did, because we covered it. It's the way the media covers it. That we're not safe now at a 4th of July parade, when in fact there were tens of thousands of safe 4th of July parades across the country.
You could make the same claim after the Waukesha incident where that
Sure.
guy drove through the Christmas parade. I mean, if you want to have some kind of illogical fear because some idiot does something incredibly dangerous and harms and kills a lot of people, then, I mean, are we to be afraid of vehicles parked along the side of the roadway at parades?
No, they'll talk about it because it made news. Then they move on because it doesn't fit the narrative that the New York Times is pushing here.
Correct.
So, and that we know that to be the case. Therein lies the lie of omission. That's why Chesapeake is now gone. History. Didn't fit their narrative. A growing number of American civilians have an unhealthy obsession with tactical culture and rifles like the AR-15. By the way, there's 25 million of them in Americans' hands, and less than 400 rifles were used to murder anybody, according to the FBI in their latest Uniform Crime Report statistics. So the 25 million in millions of Americans' hands, that's an unhealthy obsession. How come we don't have an unhealthy obsession with beating the crap out of somebody? Because more people were beaten with hands and feet and killed than with all rifles combined. In fact, I think it was near 200 plus more than all rifles combined. Because they're focusing on what? The murders that they pay great attention to and give airplay so that they can push their political agenda and their narrative. This is not hard to figure out, guys. And here they are blaming it on right-wing extremism. Now, I know we're getting ready to take a break and end the hour. Greg, how much time do we have left? Because I have to close this out and slide into home.
We're almost there. About 40 seconds.
Okay. This is called America's Toxic Gun Culture. This entire article from the editorial board focused on what weapon?
30.
The AR-15. The photograph that accompanies the article is about 4 dozen shotgun shells.
Oh, gosh.
Now, that might be funnier than my colonoscopy story, but what can I tell you? You would think that someone at the editorial board, all of these elitist fraternity scumbags, and all of these elitist editors at the New York Times would be able to look at this and go, hey, guys, maybe we should fix the picture that's accompanying the article attacking AR-15s because, well, the photograph is 12-gauge shotgun shells. You know, we really kind of look like we don't know what we're talking about. So let me help the New York Times along because you don't know what you're talking about. And like I did today or yesterday and the day before when I first saw this, but more so today even than yesterday and the day before when I originally saw this, I looked at this deeper today and I thought to myself, good Lord, when are these people do they not understand that their shtick is like way old at this point? And my response, keep it up, guys. You are job security for Armed American Radio, and we love covering your stupidity. We'll be back tomorrow.
You've just filled your prescription for freedom with Mark Walters, presented by X Insurance. X Insurance on the Armed American Radio Network.